Not too sparse now.
Yeah, come on over.
Who is here, measure, and this is ball. And then measure the radius,
Hi, how are you?
figuring that it has to go
Yes, yes.
that fucking
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, that's
So
from
this is,
one
so
or
this
two.
is ball, then the scale angle is here, and it's within the, within the firing distance. I was kind of surprised. So, 이게 ball, 이게 뭐야, 이 scale angle. I hope not, I hope it's over 3. 2. Serious? Oh, then we're all zone 2. That's scary though.
It is, ready whenever you are, sir.
We don't have this.
Somebody's gonna receive. We'll call this meeting to order.
Good morning, everyone.
Hello?
Call to order.
Ready? Thanks everyone for coming. This is a nice full house today. So first is our roll call. I'm Penny Dada and chair, and we just go around the room to say who's present, and then we'll go to the guests.
Lori Obra, Nina Tanabe,
Dr. Ely.
Todd Mendick,
Glenn Sokol.
Mike Robinson.
Eric Tanaway,
Sotero Agut.
David Tarnas.
Marisa Harman,
Troy Cable and
And then we have a guest.
Bob Lawrence from Mountain View.
Okay.
Carrie Marks.
Okay. Thank you. And so we start off with any statements from the public? Do you have any statements? Okay, everyone to watch. Then the next order of business is the review and approval of the minutes for August 19th, 2014. As,
That was emailed late yesterday,
okay,
not in the
so
morning like it was should have or before.
if people had a chance to look up over or see any changes,
Move to approve.
Second.
okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, it is approved. Okay, let's see, so we're looking at some ag updates. I think I'll start with hurricane updates, the 8 updates. Does anyone have any updates on that? Any comments on the projects you've had?
Yes. We have, we'll talk about that, right?
Yeah, the last time we met, we didn't bring that on yet, yeah?
That's right, she came on after.
Okay, yeah, okay, yeah, so we put her on a temporary contract, to help the ag industry, farmers to like fill out paperwork, educate them on programs available, fill out forms and whatnot, so we put her on an 89-day contract just to help get out there, so hopefully to, assist Glenn and whatnot, so she should be going out there and, I guess primarily is, I think I did really hard, but she's supposed to be making contact with everybody who's in there, so. If you have any questions.
I have chatted with Dai Dai. I think she's working pretty hard, I think, but it's tough because what she said is that she actually goes to the people's homes when they're not at work, and then she's doing it on the kitchen table.
Yeah, I think,
I told her, wow, please.
so she's filling out the actual
Yeah, she's
forms
actually,
herself.
Yeah,
she's
she's
asking
asking
them the questions and, cause she says, oh, write your name here, and then they give her the blank stare, so she has to actually. So it's, but she did over 50 the last time, I mean, a couple weeks ago, she said, over 50 she did already, so.
And these are applications for,
that one specifically was the TAP program for orchards. So that's not even touching whatever else is out there since the disaster declaration.
what's that acronym stand for?
Tree assistance program? Yeah,
So FSA.
yeah,
It is an essay.
yeah, yeah. Because the other programs were all loan programs, yeah.
So this one is what, like a grant?
Yeah, it's actually money that'll help you replant your trees above and beyond 20% damage. So if you don't have 20% of your crop that are considered damaged or gone, then you won't qualify. So it's anything above that.
It's a cost share program.
Oh,
To
okay.
get 65%.
Oh, okay, so there's no like limit or minimum or something like that, just that,
It's just,
You gotta have,
Yeah, cost
you gotta have
share.
20%,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
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 20% loss.
right,
Yeah.
right.
And you've gotta be able to put up 35% of the cost of your planting.
You need to put up 100%.
You need to put up
Oh,
100%,
that's a
so it's a
reimbursement.
reimbursement.
Right, that's the,
Yeah.
that's the,
Oh, okay.
you're gonna put up the 100% and then you're gonna get your 65% back.
May I ask, are there bridge loans for people who don't have cash to be able to put up the 100% and get reimbursement later? Or is that something that's possible, or?
Yeah, we're actually, I mean, I guess it depends, I mean, one, if they can qualify for it, you know, but yeah, I'm sure that the institutions would be out there to do that. Because the farm loans, I don't know if, so honestly, I don't know how long the process takes to, it'll, you know, kinda, it might, that could be like a bridge loan, but it might be too long to actually.
Farm loans usually take a lot
Yeah.
longer.
But you know what though, there are like, you know, like a microloan program but actually right now we're in the process of working with the United Way to come out with a microloan program that hopefully can better assist. Because the United Way actually got a pretty sizable grant from an anonymous donor to help for the Thorpewood areas. And part of that will be trying to develop a microloan program that's more friendly for the farmers down there. But it hasn't, we're still trying to find a organization that will administer it.
A lot of these farmers would not qualify for commercial loans.
Yeah,
Out of a
exactly,
banking institution.
exactly. So that's hopefully what the intent will be, is to maybe
Who donated?
Anonymous.
Oh,
Somebody,
Mrs. Anonymous.
yeah,
Mrs.
somebody gave $1 million to help Laura Puna.
Wow.
Yeah, it came in through United Way Worldwide.
Has there been any need, I think there's need, direct assistance for any of the greenhouse? Papaya sounds like that's working with stuff, but it seems like greenhouses are more widespread with a lot of different people.
Yeah.
Is there,
What's this good care?
do you have any insight on how they're coping, I guess?
Well, shade houses took more damage, so probably greenhouse type structures took the least amount of damage. You just probably experienced ripped plastic. And as long as that plastic didn't hold water, you didn't get heavy rain, your structure held form. You just had to make pukas in your plastic, you know, the day after, until you could rip off the plastic. The shade house guys probably took more damage because when the wind came from northeast and then changed to southeast, most of our buildings, we always have taken damage from the northeast, the trade side. Very few winds come from the southeast, but when they do come, they're real strong. And our shade houses that are 80% shade, mainly the floral crop guys, those greenhouses, because I guess the shade is more like a sail, they held the wind back, so they took more damage. So I would say, I haven't got a good survey on the shade house growers. We still are trying to decipher how much damage, but
So most of the building for them is just out of the pocket then for right now? It's-
right now, when I talked to Miki Miyasato, she said that quite a bit of the nursery floral guys applied for FSA. It seems like they're not going the DOA. You know, DOA has 100,000 and below, that disaster loan, special loan program where it's geared. And that's what I heard from Dean Matsukawa guys in Pahoa. I went to listen to that talk that Daida was putting on. So DOA has that, it kicked it off. I think maybe Papaya is going to go that way as a first route, yeah, because they don't need to get turned down. DOA, anything 50,000 or less, they didn't turn down. You don't have to get turned down from a commercial bank. So I think they're going to go. But Miki told me that, well, she was there too, and she said seemed like the August month, quite a bit of the nursery and the floral guys were going FSA on personal appointments, and they were filling out applications to actually borrow. Because FSA you can borrow bigger amount. Yeah.
Did the shade house guys go infrastructure, but did it come down on the crops as
Yeah,
well?
yeah.
And so damage to the crops.
You had the range of some guys took little, not too bad. Depending where the wind was, depending how big their structure, and like some of our vendors in Kakai area, you know, we have 3 7-acre growers side by side. One guy went completely flat. Yeah, so he's like 100% out. The middle guy was, he just took shade damage, so they got a fixed shade right now. And then the guy on the left, he had very minimal damage. So it was just the way the wind was.
And they're like tornado kind of effect.
I think so.
My farm
Could be.
in Upper Roy, I had a structure protecting my farm implements, and I didn't roll up the side, it just, like a hand just crushed it, all the welds on the pipes, the joints broke, the bungee cord didn't tear. Amazing, so, yeah, like I say, just depending on the situation.
Okay, I think that probably gets us up to Parliament, so if that is all. Is there any GMO legislative updates? I know that we're in the midst of a injunction against it, is where I think is. Okay, so that's still, nothing new, that's still the situation. Okay, and is there any word on any council bills right now that would affect agriculture, anything in particular up in that area? Okay, that's, and I guess any other administration updates?
Five came up to. Okay, I've been reminded that there's been 5 council members who have, are using some of their contingency funds to support the citric acid for Koki. And so we'll be processing their contract shortly, once we get the resolution.
I believe those districts were 2, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 2 is Yoshimoto, I'm sorry, I don't know what
I don't know the
district
name.
is. Yeah.
Okay, that's, okay, so a little bit of work on the Koki, and that sounds, then we're kind of up to date on that for the moment. We're up to date on that, okay. Next item on the agenda is discussion of the letter which you got from Act 203. I don't know if people had a chance to read that over. I was supposed to write a letter to them and thank them for it, but I did not get a chance to do that. And I still intend to, but have people had a chance to look over the letter or have any comments on it? We got it a while ago and I lost it electronically, so.
It was okay. Those letters are detailed, yeah, from planning, so. I'm not a planner, but seems okay.
Okay, anyone else have a chance to read and make comments on it?
Seeing as that the letter there,
Yeah, just got it.
may I see?
Yeah, and I might put it back on, you know, when I get a chance to look at it myself. And I'll write them a letter and try and get the next one, because this is probably 3 months old, so it's going to move on from here.
I think what's gonna happen is preliminary work was done, so we got somewhat in sync with the planning department and permitting and all that, but now, I think what we're really gonna hear is when the rubber hits the road, right? When people start wanting to use it, that's when you're gonna,
That's when you say, hey, the chicken cook okay.
yeah, yeah, whatever, right? That's when we're gonna test the system, so,
Okay, well, I'm gonna,
And, excuse me, Chair, and a lot of it will be driven by complaints.
yeah.
And so it's really neighbors coming, calling, say, hey, they built it in a setback, you know, go tell them. Unfortunately, that's probably gonna end up being the case.
okay,
Well, do
Or-
we need any public relations kind of stuff, and letting people know that we're making these changes and you can anticipate seeing some of these things, don't waste your time complaining?
Well, that's a good question. It's a good point about outreach through the commodity groups, through agricultural organizations, that this is out there, but it's not a, you know, a total free ride. It's not a carte blanche, you know, you've gotta still follow rules. So I don't know what's the best way. Maybe there's a, you know, I know they have a website, but is there maybe a flyer or something that can come out of Public Works that then we could disseminate? Maybe we can make that
I
option.
think we're probably still at the, you know, rulemaking side, so once we know what the rules are,
Right, yeah,
then we have something to disseminate. Right now, instead of not, there's so many other things going on, I'm not hearing a lot of input going into making the rules besides what we did a little while ago. So I'm gonna keep this on the agenda to touch on next time, and we'll get the letter written next time, and try and get, see if they're further along in what the actual rules are gonna be, and if there's anything that we can outreach with.
The feedback is, which is what our role is to the administration, is that when you get all this squared away and you're ready to make it available and implementable, put out a news release, you know, for the papers and radios or whatever else, hey, this is some of the things we're doing for you agriculturists out there, and neighbors be aware, because you may see some strange things happening which you haven't seen before. Just to make it well known.
Okay?
Good suggestion.
Yeah, we'll have that outreach on it. So it'll be a combination of us keeping abreast of what the rules are and then seeing what outreaching, and then maybe things come. We'll do with that.
Well, there is a public input process to this, right? I mean, the rulemaking, and people can come in and vote on it and help construct them up front.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure where they are.
Well, normally nothing happens until something gets built and then they'll enter the complaint mode, but as long as we know we're giving people a chance to rumble up front.
Okay, then. So, Dane, you were going to, I'm sorry, I missed that part.
Oh.
You're going to do a letter to?
I'm gonna do a letter, and besides thanking them, I'm gonna just ask them, you know, what their current update is. Basically, just get up to par on it and report back to this group.
Chair, I don't understand, you're talking about developing rules, is that?
But they're not us. See what?
Right, I know, but they're actually developing rules?
Well, they have to have some guidelines, similar to Maui, that we'll have.
So
how
I guess
it's
that's the, because he doesn't really address what the rulemaking process is or timeline or anything like that, because it's not in here. He doesn't-
Right, that's all I have.
He doesn't discuss anything about that, and so I just didn't know whether that is required, and if so, what form?
I'd go by using the act, basically.
Yeah, because they may, I don't know if they need to develop rules. They may just start implementing.
I think so, it's just
I don't think there's a rulemaking process.
Okay, so, this is where we are on the
Don, do you
implementation
know,
process.
is there a rulemaking process before they can implement?
I think more I think they gotta determine how they're gonna procedurally internally handle it, and I think that might be the rule that you're referring to.
But that's not a formal rulemaking
No,
process with
just-
public hearings or
Yeah,
anything.
policy, I think they
It's
gotta.
administrative
Yeah.
policies and procedures, really.
Yeah, I think that's what they gotta do.
So
with
the
that.
implementation process or procedures would be.
Yeah, because
terminology.
and that's not a public process as far as I know.
Yeah.
There's no public input, public comment.
Normally, no, yeah.
So is this a risk that we face?
Huh?
Is this a risk that we're facing by implementing something like this and not letting the public a chance to
No, it's just, I
participate?
think it's just, the county, the public already had a chance to participate in the council process
Right.
that developed the code. So now it's up to the executive branch to implement what was passed in the council. So, they're just gonna take the standard procedure of doing it. And I know in the state, you usually have to go through the chapter 91 rulemaking process to implement a statute. But the county code, I think I don't think you have the same sort of statute or regulatory step, do you, Marissa?
Well, I know when Neil came to see us was that in March, that's exactly what he was saying he needed to do was the internal, how do they process it in
Yeah.
office?
That's what I thought.
Mhm.
More ops down there, just how they gonna roll it out.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just trying to stay abreast of that, and,
But when he does have something that's ready to go live, or something that we can then pass on to our
We'd
associations,
like a copy.
we'd like to do that.
To help roll it out.
let's start building stuff.
That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The next item on our agenda is legislative committee update, and then have Dave go, and then a chance for anyone else to do, we can start putting it up to the next legislative session, but right now, we'll capture the update.
Yeah, so I perhaps just briefly overviewing where we are right now. The bills that were passed last session were, for the most part, signed into law by the governor, except for one that he let become law without his signature, and that related to the disclosure of financial requirements for boards and commissions, which we discussed previously. The constitutional, the constitutional amendment passed to allow special purpose revenue bonds to be used by private owners of dams and reservoirs and also special purpose revenue bonds to be used to assist agricultural enterprises. So it's a different way of financing, it's a complicated process, but it is certainly worth pursuing if you're going for a large enough sum of money in a special purpose revenue bond because of preferred interest rates. The primary election resulted in now a certain future of there being a new administration. We know that much. We don't know who it will be, but you can plan on there being changes in leadership at the state agency level that affects agriculture, certainly. I would just perhaps leave it at this, saying I would encourage all of you to engage the candidates in specific questions regarding agriculture, because they all need to be educated about agriculture. And I'll leave it at that, but I really encourage all of you to step it up with all the candidates.
In my experience in working with agriculture issues, once you raise the issue, all the candidates will jump aboard and say they're for it, you know, but then you have them on record as saying they're for it, which is help.
Wide variety of ag issues that the administration will have to address, some of which were addressed well by the previous administration, others weren't, you know, so it really is an opportunity for us to raise these issues during the campaign. There's also a number of interesting state Senate, state House races going on. Those will be decided at the general also, and then the state legislature is going to convene in January. The legislators are now starting to come up with ideas, and they will come up with ideas in a vacuum unless you inform them and educate them about what's needed. Because they want to do something, that's their job, is to propose legislation. So they do it anyway, whether they actually know enough about the topic to write good legislation. So I think now is the time for commodity groups and organizations to speak out to the state reps and state senators. I expect there to be a reorganization in the Senate, just because of changes in the number of senators that have happened. And I expect there to be reorganization in the House, but I wouldn't be surprised if it remains similar leadership, but may not be bipartisan, which is the way it is now.
It's bipartisan now.
Yes, the Republicans have a number of co-chair and vice chair, actually vice chair positions.
They share.
Because they share, yeah, so because the current leadership formed with the minority. I wouldn't be surprised if the current leadership tries again, but with just the majority. So, that being said, I think there may be some changes in committee leadership. So, as that all unfolds, I'll certainly keep you informed. I have talked to a couple different legislators. They're talking about different ideas about what could be done on agricultural lands to make it housing more affordable. I've heard that from a couple different people. So I expect to see some legislation related to housing on ag land. That could affect a lot of things. It's not a new idea, but it's an idea. Affordability of housing for farm labor, for farm owners is one thing, and that's very important. But there's also other residential development on ag land that you just have to pay attention to what is going to be in the bill. So our job as the commission is to provide advice to the mayor on legislation. I don't have any information on what priorities this administration has for state legislative proposals. I will ask and see if there are any, and I would encourage, if there's any information you have at R&D about any proposed legislative initiatives from the county to the state, please let me know. And I certainly will follow up on those. We would be happy to get direction from the mayor in terms of what he would like us to pursue, to learn more about, to advise him about in terms of legislation. Without that, it's really, if we come up with ideas, it's really ideas for legislation that as a group, our main thing would be to suggest to the mayor that he pursue this because of these certain reasons.
Right, let them know it's important to us.
Let him know it's an important topic to us. But the mayor cannot propose legislation. It has to be done through a state senator or state representative. So it's a question of who's going to be pursuing that. there's a number of state reps and state senators from this island that are very interested in agriculture, and they want to be very active in legislative initiatives regarding agriculture. So I think they'd be open to ideas. But as a commission, our job is not to advise the legislators, it's to advise the mayor. As individuals and as commodity groups, I encourage you to, educate the legislators. But as a commission, we have a different role. I think that's about plenty of an update. Any questions about where we are in the legislative process?
Could I make a comment? I briefed everyone of last session on invasive pests. And bills like House Bill 1994 and Senate Bill 2347 that came out last year. It was a sleeper. Nobody knew about it until it came out bad, and then we gutted it, and then eventually one died, one deferred. What I'm hearing is that they're going to reintroduce that language again. And, so we have an opportunity because I don't know if you guys saw Civil Beat, Glenn Tevis. He came out in a Civil Beat interview, and basically he said if you're the bad guy, people should know you're the bad guy, and the nursery industry is the bad guy. And he came out strong on that. So I talked to Dean Gallo, and she is trying to rein this guy in, similar to the other organic guy that is kind of a radical too. But there's two of them in UH that she's trying to kind of rein in because they're causing a lot of unrest in the college. So anyway, she basically said this guy, when he does interviews, he just gets overboard. He doesn't think very well, and he says things that might not be true.
And they're CTAR employees, right?
They're CTAR employees, and they're being quoted as CTAR employees, and they're going on record, and that's going against CTAR's mission. It's dividing the community, it's dividing agriculture, and he shouldn't do that. I mean, there's other ways to communicate right now. But what we're really concerned is, so, David, if you have suggestions on, we're going to see the mayor, is I think we need to look at what we did last year on those bills. When it was first introduced, we had meetings with Chair Enright, and when his department was asked for amendments to those bills, we've asked, and we still haven't gotten amendments. Now, those amendments can come through senators and representatives. I'm sure they have access to those amendments. But we've gone to him to ask for those amendments on what he means by, after he did those amendments, he said, he went on record saying that he can live with it. The department can live with it. So what we asked in preparation for this session, what are the amendments? We'd like to read those amendments coming out of the department so that we know what is the department's stance on invasive pests. In the area, in last year, in the area of County of Hawaii, and also in the area of the nursery industry. We have not gotten those amendments to date, still. And, this being September, and, at the ledge right now, they're putting together the bills already. Things are actually written and moving already. They're feeling it out right now. So maybe, my request is maybe you could help. Maybe we just have to go other avenues to get those amendments so that we understand the kind of language that the department wants to use in regards to these type of bills.
On that, I'll follow up and do legislative research on the testimony that may include those amendments that Chair Enright is referring to. It'll be in the legislative history, so let me review that and provide that information.
I just, for Dave, would it be appropriate for us as a group to try and look for either amendments or specific language that, like basically in invasive species, we're trying to, on one hand, stop them from coming in, and the second hand, make sure that our growers aren't penalized with stuff that came in that's going back out again. At the same time, we don't want to, give anyone else fire ants or cookies too. Sure. So that it could end up being like, both the sentiment, like this is what we're trying to accomplish, and then possibly specific language. But would the mayor be able to then do something with that?
it's up to the mayor to be as assertive as he wants to be with his lobbying, but that's all he can do is lobby.
So it could be
And
appropriate
so-
for us to clarify our thoughts that way, not go too far into it, but at least get, our subjects, our priorities lined up, I guess, would be.
And that makes sense, and I think going on what work we did last session, identifying what priorities were high enough that we actually did provide advice to the mayor about, see whether or not those issues are ripe for return to the legislature. If so, then we should notify him that they're on its way, and here's our input at this stage without having seen any bill, but it might be a good heads up. So that might be worth it to have those discussions at the next meeting. If we
Right,
can
because
have enough
I
information.
figure October is probably the most important one, November a little bit, but that way.
They'll both be helpful.
If we can get it onto our, particular public record, that's another basically from what legislators towards too, say, hey, this is what this group has supported. Mike?
Yeah, this is I think, a big issue, because it's reactive, as you mentioned, and I don't want to see us just kick the can down the road constantly because invasive species aren't going away. My understanding is that invasive species come in many ways, some through the landscape industry, some through any of us actually, just going on vacation and bringing a suitcase home with fire ants in it. It's all possibilities. But we're not gonna solve the inter-island issues until we solve what's coming into the state in the first place. That's very complex from what I understand from the landscape industry, because you folks need to constantly bring in new material to be competitive in a global market, right? So that's the difficulty that these guys face, is how can they continue to be competitive by bringing in new products, raising them in Hawaii and selling them at an affordable price without bringing hitchhikers with them, right?
Yeah, the big concern, I think to that, Mike, is if we have a functioning biosecurity program, a comprehensive biosecurity program under the department, it is a comprehensive process of doing risk assessments. Every host and every invasive pest, about 100 of them right now that are on the list, concerns, right? Every host and every risk assessment on a pest that's coming into the state needs to be addressed. But which comes first, yeah? The horse or the cart? Do we focus attention only on inter-island movement, which is what happened last session? That means all the state ag inspectors would be taken off of watching product coming from outside. And then 70% of the invasive pests that we get in the state is coming from international markets. Well, a big portion of that is coming from international. So of course, DOA has to work with USDA on the inspection of product coming in. But it has to be done in a comprehensive way. You cannot just piecemeal this, like what Mike is saying. You cannot just say, okay, we're going to quarantine the Big Island and we're going to stop the movement of nursery product to the population center of Honolulu. And then so we're going to protect Honolulu because Big Island is, we wrote off Big Island already. But at the same time, if you only have all the inspectors watching Honolulu or shipping from the Big Island to Honolulu, nobody's watching inbound, you're going to get stuff worse. Now, there are stuff out there that is worse than what we have. And we're just on the tip of the
And
iceberg.
there's models that we can look at, Australia and New Zealand, that have extremely tight biosecurity rules to protect much larger places than Hawaii. We've been very successful at it for 20 years, but we just sort of ignored some of that because it's not the way we do things.
So either have developed either further language or models or something that could be basically concise, saying what it is, but have depth behind it if someone wants to find out more about it. Because that's what I'm kind of searching for. Let's get that onto the agenda next and say, okay, this is what we support, say, what you just said, a biosecurity program, these would be the elements of it. We're talking about state and federal level, that we're affected by the county because we're affected commercially by the county, and we might be bitten, or this is the Kochi flies and that in the county, but still, it can't be fully or very well addressed at the county level by the student affected. So that integration has to include the county, so we need the county to and then have that proactive, so that maybe becomes some of the language or some of what's the discussion hinges around would be good.
And the timing is really good, I'm sorry, but the timing is really good because of the wall that was put in last year, which in my opinion was a kick the can down the road kind of thing, because that wasn't the real issue. The issue is they're getting here in the first place. Then we're all scrambling to keep them from moving into bigger areas, including other islands. The conservation community has been after this for years, we all know, but they're so focused on native forest that nobody really cares. But now all of a sudden the ag community can come in behind that and say, yeah, we got issues too. We got fire ants, we got all kinds, we got coqui frog, we got all kinds of things. We want to see this happen. Maybe a coalition can be formed at the appropriate level to make some real progress.
Okay, I'm gonna put that on the agenda and see if we can come up with something, whatever concise. And anyone else who has stuff that, needs to, take us to that level, we have something fairly concrete to, pass
Mayor
on.
Conway's the kind of guy to jump right on.
Yeah, Eric, I'm not familiar with the language of the bills you're quoting, but I'm assuming it's both bugs and plants as for biosecurity. And where's the turf war between USDA and Department of Ag? Where's the?
Right now, Hawaii is on this, I don't know the terminology, but sometime in the past, flowers is under USDA and plants is under the Department of Ag. And it's one of those turf wars where I do this, you do that, and we don't do it together.
Two never.
Is that in part because, I know that the feds treat Hawaii as a foreign destination, which, where that little star on the bottom left corner, right? But, so is that part of the thing?
Yeah, I think part of the biosecurity program is actually having this kind of discussion at the national level in DC to try and get this thing worked out in the state so that USDA and Department of Ag can work more harmoniously together.
Because when we were going through the fireweed deal, getting that moth released, that sat on somebody's desk in DC for 2 years trying to get that thing released. I know there was our state did everything they could, and it would just hit a wall up there. And so I know there's a little bit of a turf war there. So Chair, maybe, to me, the future of agriculture is by keeping us biosecure as possible. So I think whatever we can do to help the mayor and kind of focus him on getting something done as far as biosecurity from a statewide perspective is really important.
I think it's a nice organization, it's a nice definition because it's regional.
Yeah.
And it's multi-government level, and it's what's affecting us. Okay, so wait.
Just to add to that, and I don't know how many of you know, but USDA and Department of Ag, in one particular issue, they happen to work together. And that was with the, how do you say, the importation of green beans. Okay, the importation of green beans is under the federal USDA rule, right? It comes under the federal USDA, but with the HDOA's support in that. And what it means is that any coffee coming from outside of Hawaii needs to be fumigated, treated. Okay, and that comes under the USDA rules, right? Supported by HDOA because they were trying to protect the coffee industry at that particular point in time, I don't know, maybe 20 years ago, if not longer. So there is a mesh and a mechanism currently that the HDOA and USDA works together. And that may be a model that people can take a look at.
A precedent.
Right, I mean, it's a first step because part of it is, I know the coffee gets fumigated on the mainland and they need to provide a certificate of fumigation that it was taken care of. And that comes from the USDA that is provided to HDOA. So there is a mesh, to that where it can be worked out. How that would play, I don't know, that could be a mechanism that people may be able to look at and see how they could use that model, right, and go one step further. Because about 15 or 20 years ago, we tried to implement from the coffee industry the same thing. But it sounded pretty bad because what we were trying to do was to levy a 5 cents a pound importation fee, right? But they thought there was a tax, but at that particular point in time, the coffee industry was looking at, because we had this matrix of the 10 most devastating diseases that could come in and devastate coffee. That was about 15 years ago. So some of them tried to implement that rule And they introduced it to the legislature, but got shut down because some of the coffee importers didn't want that 5 cents a pound. But it wasn't to protect the coffee industry, it was really to protect the invasive species aspect, right? But people just didn't understand that. So now, 15, 20 years later, there's no mechanism. So, I mean, just as a suggestion, you know, maybe someone can take a look at that, or even the Department of Ag and USDA can give us some recommendations and some of that, and how it could mesh together, because it's meshing together now for the coffee industry.
No, that'll be good model to be put into whatever they can buy security. I got some information emailed yesterday that was really high quality on GMO labeling from Berkeley Biorecord, good science behind it. It's a wider issue because it affects so many different crops, and it affects both markets and what you can grow with it. So I'm going to try and see if I can get that scan, pass that in, and then not really dwell on it as a major issue, but have it in there as a background, because the issue as a whole is coming up, and we're looking at it down the way as far as, you know, the different bans and injunctions and that stuff. This is somewhere in between there, and you know, look what the pros and cons are. This was just interesting. Just came on. I just was reading it last night, and it's the highest quality that I've seen. And the person who's doing it out Berkeley, I've worked with him before on national levels on basically organic issues. So I trust his judgment and quality. So I will pass that out, put it on. I don't want to make it a major because I know it can get too big too quickly. I want it for background information for us. And then, does anyone else have anything from, you know, make my direction, or that's looking legislatively, or anything else? Okay.
2 funding bills last session were considered important by this committee, the Coffee Berry Borer appropriations for their subsidy program, and the McNutt Felted Cotsid research, it was a treatment, right? It was a research, that's right. It's treatment for CBB research for the coccidiosis. I think the commission would benefit knowing if those subsidy programs need to need to come back up again for additional funding, or what the status is on that. So I would encourage you to let it, educate us about, from the coffee perspective about the CBB funding. Is that something that needs to be funded again next session? Okay. And then the
It's an ongoing.
So the funding that was only enough for a short period of time?
Yeah.
Okay, and it's all used up, or going to be?
In Ka'u, we just started using it. We have one time distribution, but we still have like at least two more distributions.
So basically, it'll need same level of funding, or if it needs to be different funding, then let us know, because I think that's appropriate for us to advise the mayor about that, because that affects, important commodity groups on this island. Same thing with felted cotsid. If you could find out, is that something that needs additional funding? If so, let's get in front of it.
Well, initially, I can say that we're very kind of disappointed in that all of the money went to research and none of it is really hitting the ground. And we're finding that the researchers, both from the mainland and guys from Australia, are coming into our farm to study while we're doing it, how we're knocking this thing out. And the problem being is that it's very similar to CBB. It takes monthly, very expensive foliar applications, and it can be knocked out. This is a pest that is not new to the world. It's been dealt with for years and decades in Australia, and we know how to knock it out already, but it just costs money, and we're not getting the money. The money is going to the researchers to find out what we already know, so it's been initially very disappointing.
If I may, Chair, could I ask, is it then advisable for the mayor to advocate for a different sort of funding program, which would be more similar to the subsidy that the CBB
For control measures.
control program is getting now?
I think so.
I think it's,
Instead of the research
you
funding.
might be looking for a quick response, actually.
Yeah.
Because right now, if they're funding research, it's gonna go UH.
It's gonna be years down the line, and maybe they'll find a magic bullet to deal with this pest.
but
Is
it's
he
gonna
gonna
take
do
trials.
epidemiology first?
Yeah.
You
We already got quotes of work.
So, I mean, that's,
Not grows.
that may be important work, but if you're looking for a control subsidy,
Yeah.
that's a different way to spend the money, and if that's important enough for the commission, so we should have that on our agenda, you know, those two things, the CBD and
Well, the other
toxic.
things
Funding.
that have come up recently, which we don't have well represented here, is the citrus pest, you know, the potential value is high. They all fall under what we're talking about, the biosecurity. And I'm not quite sure, though we could get it on the other side, the update on what's going on with the bees, because Garden's on the other side, and he's usually on top of, you know, the bee declines and the sound of the bee attacks that have been happening, which affects all of our industry.
I could check on the, if there's, I'll check with my sources in the bee industry, you do the same, I think, but I think it'd be, if we could have, at the next meeting, you know, we could take a look at, as I say, the things that we advocated for last session that need to be advocated for again, this upcoming session. Let's get a little ahead of the curve on it, and so if, like the CBD and the toxic funding, that may be two more examples of that sort of thing.
Yeah, because I think the bee experience, because they struggle, because they're a small industry,
Yeah.
so they struggle a lot, but they, you know, the guys doing it went up and down, watching, they went all the levels, they know how that works. That's all the same thing, they've got to go through each one of these pests individually, and, you know, unless we can get it
Yeah.
more organized.
Well, you know, just going back to what Troy was saying, and even with the CBB is the same thing, you know, and I don't think we kind of touched on that. We need rapid response that we can actually slap, right, and kill the beetle. In our particular case, not the research, you know, the amount of money that was given to PBART, right, and the university, that was mostly for research. And some of the funding for quick response was they wouldn't, you know, in certain cases, they were asking people to survey their land and you know, take a sampling of the CBB and all of that. And in the meantime, you know, some of these people are very, very, how do you say, private. They don't want anybody on their property. You know, so this getting on the property issue was a major thing. And in the end, what was happening, especially for those people in Kona, was they were asking for the farmers to provide all the survey information, you know, and all this information. And as they got some of this microtrol or botanidar to be able to battle the insects. But in the end, they were getting the information with the farmer doing almost all of the work. So a lot of the farmers, yeah, and the farmers just went like this, you know what? I'm not gonna use that even if I get a voucher, right? Because I may as well just buy the product myself, right? It becomes a taxable expense, and you know, they're starting to get, and not let people on the property. Okay, and that was one of the major issues with a lot of the CBB, you know, even with the voucher program, because some of it, people were supposed to test, sample, provide that information.
That's what happened to me, I just didn't have time.
That's
I
right.
had to go to Farmer's Garden, get Bob and put it on my farm.
There you go.
In less time than that.
No, absolutely, and not do the research for somebody that's getting paid to do the research.
I know they're there.
Yeah, the farmers are just livid in Kona. They're just livid.
Chair, I gotta agree with Sotoro, because coming back to the whole fireweed situation, and maybe looking back what Eric was talking about, however the information comes out as commission, encourage not just rapid response, but rapid response on a more broad spectrum. And I'm not sure if that's going to be the state level or at the federal level, and maybe we need to be encouraging to talk not just our state representation, but our federal representation to get rid of this turf war, and figure out how to make it work, because on the fireweed, that started out with some contaminated hydromulch in one little area. And, well, you know, and in North Kohala. And what happened was, the last estimate from NRCS was, it will affect something like 40% of the state land mass in the next 10 years if it goes unchecked. And had some program come in and jumped on it and said, hey, this is wrong. And, you know, go down, buy a bottle of 2,4-D or wow, right? Something along those lines, so kind of a recurrent theme. By the time we actually get to something,
It's a bigger problem.
it's a huge problem. And so,
Our kids already study in school.
high school. I think, Sotoro, stop me if I'm putting words in your mouth, no one disagrees with the research.
Right.
well, we gotta stop the fire before, you know, we can't study water long enough, we gotta stop the fire first.
And it's like Troy was saying, right? People they're coming to learn what we're doing. They're coming to learn what we're doing. Right? They're not trying to help us learn more to prevent it. They're learning what we're doing because we're being effective in doing it, you know, like you. I mean, just go out there and get it.
Yeah. We've been doing like 33 sampling every time that we have to get the distribution of the botanic garden or microcontrol.
That millions of dollars can pick out.
Has that been a disincentive for coffee farmers in your area to use the subsidy program, or are they still
No,
using
we've
it
been doing
anyway?
it. It's like a given, you know, that you have to do it, you know.
It's a
Otherwise
requirement.
you have to go and buy it on your own, which is more expensive.
Okay.
Okay, I think you got really good direction.
And I see people like from Cesar, they come to my field, they just I said, all right, fine, get what you get. Just give me results, you know, but I haven't gotten any results yet. But I just want to thank the county and the mayor for giving us the funding for CBB. That was a good start for us. And then Shaq took over.
And that was money that the county found that wasn't originally appropriate for that reason, right?
Yeah.
You had to reallocate that from someplace else in the budget.
So what we've been doing with that was also we have to take, you know, the survey for that, and we've seen that from like high percentage to it went down from stages. The 3 applications that we had, we have 42% on the beginning, and then it went down half, and then in the last was like 9 to 10%. So you could see the trend.
So should we advocate for a SWAT team budget? No, really, you know, $500,000 sitting there, and when the next best comes in, boom, we whack it.
That's all the stuff that you want, you know, we've got, we get down to concrete for our next meeting. Let's see, and if there's any models, if you're talking about any models people have done anywhere else, that would be, you know, especially if it's a county that's kind of similar, it'd be nice to see if there's something visible.
Well, this mayor is really good about, you know, like for instance, it's a state project, but, you know, give it to the county and let the county administer it. He's really good at being able to work situations. And I've always been an advocate of home rule, state-supported, federally backed, and go uphill, not downhill. And if there's some way that funding, you know, like I said, he's very good at being able to home administer some of these programs. Maybe something along that line could happen.
And that would be a way to get maybe federal, state funds into that pot of money that,
Right.
and yeah, guess what, we do it.
I mean, because I'm reminded of the Kahu Gymnasium, that's a state program, but the county took that over to get that thing built. And so, you know, there's always precedent to have that type of stuff done, so why not this too?
So I think you've got definitely good directions to go to the next meeting. I think it is coalescing in a way that is similar across almost all of our industries. I mean, almost anything's dealing with plants, dealing with these issues. That's the weeds, for sure, but new ones coming in. I'm going to move on to if there's any updates on dams and reservoir regulations. I know that was brought up at last meeting that we want to try and get this discussion possibly in a similar vein of trying to see if there's language that we want to try and get into the next legislative session.
Yeah, I mean, that's my curiosity. I wasn't sure I was supposed to go look for something. I thought someone was going to be bringing something to us.
No, I just wanted to bring it back up for discussion.
Yeah, I would be very curious, because as we went through that whole dam and reservoir challenge, having a, you like that word, having an actual confirmation of what rules and regulations are enforced, it was very vague, and Illinois never actually, it was very, very vague. So I think if we have a good understanding of what's going on, because I think going into the future, it's going to be important as agriculture grows, and I fully expect that to grow on this island. Water impoundment is the word they're going to use. It's going to be critical, and so we should try and get into that and have clear understanding so we can help advise on that. So if we get something from Illinois.
If I may, Chair, I'd be happy to put this under the legislative committee since it's implementation of some legislative issues. I could call and find out what the status is of the rules, because I think that's The key question is, where are we on the proposed rules, because they were signed or weren't signed or what, and it was so iffy. So I could find that out for the next meeting,
Okay, that's
and then provide any update on related dam and reservoir related legislation. So I could bring that in under the legislative committee if that's the.
Right, and then see, because maybe that's the rules that are in there now. It's more on the administration side and less on legislation going in the next
I
session.
think it is rules.
Yeah, it was rules, and last time I saw, it was unclear whether or not, it had something to do with between the lieutenant governors and the governor's office, and there was a stutter step there. But I think it'd be very good to know what the rules
So I'll
are.
find that out. And I'll get, if they have been approved, I'll get copies and send them in so that they can be distributed.
And there's two components to it. One is the existing things that have to be upgraded to a certain standard, and then any new structures have to be at a certain standard, right? So it's important for us to know what those are. If we have existing ones, we gotta do something, and if we're planning new ones, we gotta do something.
That was my understanding,
Yeah.
but again, it was very.
But it seems like it died down a little bit, you know, now it's, I don't know.
Well, I know it was based upon FEMA 333, which, like I said, governed the Hoover Dam and Grand Coulee Dam. And also they said that the big issue was where any loss of life shift from one person to zero, so there's no tolerance, and that's just not reasonable. So, and that was what they were quoting at the time. This is 20 years ago now, so it'd be a good idea to know what the rules are.
Yep, I'll do that.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is something which I've been working on. It's a brief update. I'm looking at, how to create sustainable ag revenues for the county, looking from the county perspective. We have hotels, and they give a whole lot more revenue when we build a hotel that goes to the county. Even though they complain about paying the taxes on it, they still get a lot of support and infrastructure, and they get, kind of a little bit lined up to have that develop. And I'm looking at ways in other parts of the country and that agriculture can be benefit to the county coffers directly. And we're coming up with, it's basically the major place it's going to be under is going to be under property tax rules. And then within there, this particular county has the per value of the real estate, but they also have value that put structures on it. Put a house on it, that's worth more than pure property. And by playing around in that area is where hopefully sustainable agriculture and stuff that we said we wanted to do like 2 or 3 years ago in our county ag policy paper, we can try and get that lined up with how the revenues come in. The second major source of income is the intergovernment transfers of funds. We're talking about federal to state to county, and that actually is it's more generally for most counties. It's more for schools, but we don't have that system. But still, the same process is, brings money into rural areas. And partly it's rural development, and then partly it's agriculture development. So I'm looking at that. I'm thinking that seems to be activity from the county council on, looking at property tax, trying to see people cheating, trying to change ag based on it. But I think we need to be also looking at if there's a way that we can make that more beneficial to the county if they're successful. They don't really see the benefits. So that's what I'm working on.
The real property tax thing, there's two things there. One obviously is generate an income for the county, and that's based on the value of what you have, and they get their pound of flesh based on the value. So if you raise a crop that's worth more, you pay more taxes, right? Everybody knows that. The second thing though is policy planning. You can actually influence an industry with your tax structure, and I think Macknuts, when they got started, were free for 8 years until you got the trees growing and producing. So that's something that maybe particular industries or new and upcoming industries could look at, and say, okay, we don't have to pay tax until our orchard crops are in place, or we get rid of the latest bug. I mean, you want to get the county behind getting rid of an invasive species, just say, well, guess what, we don't pay taxes until we're competitive again because we don't have to pay to reduce the invasive species on our properties. That's something I hope you're thinking about as you approach
I want to do both those, because most of the times when we're coming in at agriculture, we're looking for a tax break or but it ends up being reduction revenues. And the idea is that builds up economy or builds up some other values that the county's valuing. So we want to look at that side. policies, but I also want to look at the side of saying, okay, can we make this something that's really strong? I mean, it's, it's just in Colorado, so one of the obvious examples there is watching the pot industry build up, and all of a sudden, certain, it's county by county, so if counties don't basically buy in to the retail stores, they don't get revenues back in. So that's creating an incentive that's, you can just see like instantly stuff is popping up. Now, if you can do that, some of that, so that's sort of looking at it and get that kind of support to bring agriculture up, that's what I want to look at. I want to look at it and just look at that kind of where, I've been looking at the county levels and county rules, but where I'm being drawn towards is groups like the Lincoln Institute, different groups of consortiums that are basically kind of like they're private, and they're actually private for-profit, that stick together all kinds of policies. I mean, there's one group that just works with bike paths, and they've just made it so good that they have something for the school level, the county level. They just lay out what the path is for a better community. So I'm looking at it from agriculture, but it bridges into how do you build a better community. But I'm focusing it specifically on agriculture. And so anyhow, that's as far as I've gotten, and I haven't gotten past that yet.
In your report that you had given to us before, you had listed a number of different sources of intergovernmental revenues to pursue. And I didn't know whether that's, is there any suggestions that we have for the county, whether it's R&D or somewhere else in the county, to pursue these, to see if they're actually taking advantage of the funding that's there, or there may be new sources?
Well, I had a chance to talk to Scott from the state level about the issue. And he said basically, no one's really focusing, no one's looking at it that way and really going right at it. Probably just developed some extra, an R&D, an extra coordinator, a sustainable person.
That's why I wondered whether if this is, I know you have a lot on your plate at R&D, but if there's sources of funding that Tame's identified, whether that's appropriate for someone to start chasing that money in the county.
Well, I
just wanted to bring it up because it was something that he meant, he's gotten in his report, and we haven't done anything with it, but I thought it was useful.
Yeah, I think what will come down to is realizing how much value there is, getting some comparison, saying, okay, there is actually a value in pursuing it, and seeing, if we can do that within the government, within the county administration, it would be excellent. And now, as I'm starting to study these other groups that are kind of these for-profit outside, they look like nonprofits, but they're actually, I guess they're consulting groups is what it comes down to. I guess Kohala Center is kind of filling that role at the moment, where they're pulling in a lot of funds even for the UH, just because they deal with the administration part. Just like we're trying to get our microtrol, they just say, okay, we'll take care of that part. and so it's starting to be that type of paperwork stops you, because each one is the same thing, but once you kind of gotten the hang of it, you can kind of do that for everyone else, and then have other people, pursue spending money and making reports back to you. So I think there's some play in there, and so I'm looking to see if that's something we can do with agriculture. So hopefully keep on studying and see if I can come up with stuff that will include policy, because that's the purpose of it. It is, revenues and policy, and try and get those two tied together. That's really the underlying purpose, because if they're not tied together, no matter how good your policy is, the revenues eventually is going to trump it.
If you're staying on top of the real property tax situation, I'm anticipating we're going to see a big boost in fake farming, or a big reduction in fake farming, because the county's taking a serious look at whether you're a real farmer or not. Do you expect a lot of lands to open up as a result of property owners looking to seek legitimacy to keep their taxes low, which is an opportunity we could seize?
I think it depends on the scale. I mean, the scale which I look at is pretty much a small scale, like under 10 acres, and people that are essentially professionals who also have, kind of hobby farms. They take it more seriously or less seriously, depending on, how they can do it at the moment. And the question is whether those people will just drop it totally. Say you're a coffee farm with, $1 million house on a 3-acre coffee farm, and they suddenly say, okay, we're not getting tax break anymore. Hey, we're just going to put in ornamentals. We're not going to bother with all the rest of the stuff. So it could go that way, or it could go that people say, okay, now I'm gonna take it more seriously. So I think on a small scale, it's probably gonna break down. You sit there and say, do I have time to do it? Do I have the expertise to do it? And if I put the money out, is it still a fun hobby, or is it not worth doing anymore? So, man, it depends on how enforcement of the rules, come in. I think, I don't know for sure. I imagine to go forward. I don't think people can all of a sudden know back taxes because there's a non-existent farm for a while. But I think going forward is where you're going to see where people have to make this type of
Do you think
decision.
the $2,000 a year requirement is about spot on, or is that too
Running
much?
with the GET, is it 2,000?
I think that's what it is, isn't it? 2,000, you have to qualify, you have to demonstrate you earn $2,000 a year off your farming property.
Well, I think we'll force people to say what crop they're growing at least. on the land. I haven't been into that detail on it, but I've definitely just been pretty much reading the papers and hearing some stuff from the county council. And,
Well, I'm reapplying for my exemption, that's why I know that.
oh, okay.
And I'm growing 35-year-old hardwood trees, so I like, hey, I can't show any income yet.
Right.
But I think I don't think that'll hurt me, at least what I'm hearing.
Okay, so I'll bring.
But cattle guys, I mean, a great opportunity for grass-fed cattle or sheep or any kind of livestock, right?
You and I have had this discussion about real property taxes before, but yeah, there is an opportunity here. And curious on the question, is our land's going to open up? Because I think with that, with the advent of the push for more forage finish, and more land's going to need to be available to have that finish capability, but it has to be the right lands. So I'm kind of curious to see how that evolves.
Well, I think separate industries should be thinking about that. If that 2,000 holds through what they're doing, then I mean, I don't know if you can make $2,000 raising goats on 3 acres of land, a year. I don't know. But if you can't, then maybe we should try to influence. Okay, but if you hooey up with your neighbors and you create viable acres, that's a legitimate ag industry, making your $2,000 a year. Boom. Put us all under the lower tax rate. On the other hand, if I can grow nursery crops, in 500 square feet of nursery space and get rich, that's a whole different scenario then. But we should be aware of that and try and influence how the rules change so that all of our industries benefit from people trying to keep their taxes as low as possible, but not having much choice anymore.
Well, that was is that okay?
Yeah.
Sure. That was the conversation that Mike and I had previously. For agriculture, and this is a friendly place to say this, people say it looks like agriculture is undertaxed. And I would actually offer that maybe it's overtaxed, because taxes are to support the infrastructure, highways, hospitals, police, and like that. And agricultural land really doesn't use any of that. The people on the land does. And so this is where we kind of poke fun at each other a little bit. But yeah, thinking more of a global look at it, because if you have 10 people with 2 acres each, he has 20 acres. Now, an entity can make 20 acres or maybe 2 10-acre parcels do something, but doing 2 acres at a time, maybe you can't do something. And so I think this is a good opportune time to start looking at it, and I think we have to start looking at it across commodities rather than just being focused on our own commodities, because there may be byproducts of one that contribute to another. As long as Lori keeps bringing coffee, I can wind up and keep talking,
The forestry has there are state programs to support forestry where you can hooey up with a neighbor and qualify for assistance because you're doing the same thing and the property boundary doesn't exist according to the program.
I think we talked, and maybe not with you, Mike, but I know on Kauai, the Kalepa project, that they spread the trees out a little bit further and actually grazed underneath. So they got dual use. And so it was, don't talk to the forestry guys alone or the cattle guys alone. Put them in the same room and let them work out the details, and then you get double use. And then that increases the cash flow on the land, which the landowner then can glean from that, and then the tax basis, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, and it was something pretty dumb, but, or not dumb, but insightful that, by raising less trees, the
Get more value.
more value. And that's saying it's cash flow, but that's the same thing, people have to come into the room and sit down and nobody get greedy, and everybody has to want to share, so.
Right.
But I think that's where our future is.
You know, the other thing as you talk about some of these tax and assessments is I know in some states or even maybe here it's happening also in Hawaii, is using the USDA crop standard production numbers, right? To be able to say, okay, because there's statistics, take like us, macadamia nuts and coffee, you need to provide those statistics to the USDA, right? So understanding what the production is, right? Maybe you can't beat the $2,000 level, right? But if you've got 1 acre and you're producing the USDA standard, I mean, right? I mean, just a thought, but there's some baselines that you can look at this particular point in time without even having to reinvent the wheel.
I'd be, this is kind of tangential to it, but I think between now and next meeting, and spring, almost Kamehameha schools actually, they're going to be going to Wahoo, they're working on food core systems and food systems that are getting food into schools. And there's a meeting that we're participating in Oahu and kind of help create that link from local foods into the local school system, but a little bit more beyond that. And the stuff that comes in that's relevant for here, then I'll bring it back to here. But that's bubbling up, and what it's doing on a small scale is creating it's creating institutional marketing. An avenue is opening up for institutional marketing that wasn't existing before. The farmers market helps on one end. Now people are going to be able to we can kind of consolidate for people and get enough to provide a steady amount of lunches for somebody instead of oh, well, here's my stock of bananas, who's got it next week? That doesn't work for this lunch program. But anyhow, so that will be somewhat involved with this.
Chair, I have a comment on that one. The cattle industry looked at the school lunch program, and what happened was because of the USDA programs that buy up, we were trying to get Hamburger in and get a guaranteed contract, and I understand from the school perspective that they have to have a guaranteed supply. But the problem we ran into when we were looking at that was the USDA that buys up extra, again, in the marketplace, to supply the USDA, then they sell it at whatever the going market price was. The cattle industry was fine with that, except under the USDA program, all freight was free, so they'd ship it from the West Coast to Hawaii free. Couldn't compete against that. And so, it's a catch-22 for the cattle industry and that was for a school lunch program put in place for all the right reasons, but it screwed the cattle industry because we couldn't compete against it. So,
how old was that? How long ago was that?
last year,
Last year,
2 years
okay.
ago. I mean, this is very, very current, and that was one of the problems. And I understand what they're talking about, but that was a federal program. And so again, coming back into this, looking at it, I think if we stay just county, we have to look bigger because the global, right? We are global now.
Okay, that's definitely. Keep that aware, be aware of that. Be aware of that.
That wasn't only for cattle industry though, didn't that include things like
I'm sure
vegetables
that-
and all that kind of
yeah,
stuff? So
I'm
you
sure
couldn't
it was
compete
everything.
cabbages and
Yeah.
stuff, yeah.
It was because it was for this school lunch program, and so it was USDA, using American commodities to feed school children. All sounds great, but then for the commodity raiser out here in Hawaii, boy, compete against California.
Okay. I think we've covered a lot of this, but next item on the agenda is just extra requests. If there's any extra committees or any extra ideas, I think, if anyone has any, I give this your chance to have, but I think we've covered a lot already. Is there anything that people feel we've missed that we should look at for the next meeting? It seems to me like biosecurity is going to capture a lot of what we've been talking about. Okay. Then I guess we're on to confirming the next meeting, so we
Sure. Just in terms of next agenda, I think it is instructive for us to keep getting updates on the disaster recovery efforts for agriculture and what's working and what's not working. Because this is not the last time we'll have a natural disaster.
Yeah, we got lava coming.
And so I think anything we can learn from the successes or failures in this incident and the recovery from the hurricane and the lava we should do our best to think it through, articulate what we think the county should do, and then give some advice.
Very good. Get a, probably more organized response.
Yeah, I think each of us has different experience ourselves in our own commodity groups and our own work with this disaster recovery effort. And if we can have that on the agenda so we can share what we've learned, and if there is something that rises high enough that we can provide input to the county on how to improve things, or good job, you did this, you know, I think it's worth it for us to do that, have it on the agenda for next time.
Okay, excellent. I'll be there. So we're back to our regular schedule. We should be in Kona. We don't have to re-scramble and find.
No. We're gonna be back in Kona next meeting?
Originally
I thought
scheduled
we were
one.
supposed to be in Kona today.
No, we were supposed to be in
Here,
Gila,
let me pass
and they
this
wanted
over
to
to
change
you.
it to Kona, but couldn't.
Pass this over to
They wanted to change it to Kona for today because we had missed 2 or 3 meetings in Kona, so that was the hopes, but due to conflict and conference room availabilities, we thought best that we just keep the schedule and we'll get to Kona eventually, which would be next month.
When is the date on?
Can I have this?
That's
Yes,
yours,
sir,
Michael,
it's
that's
yours
yours.
now.
What's the date next month?
Huh?
What's the date?
October 21st.
Mike, just get on your motorcycle.
And I have
Dude, you're so
confirmed,
close.
I have confirmed that the conference room is still with our name on it, so.
Okay, excellent.
So don't change it.
Let's see, yes.
Chair, if I may, I'm sorry, I keep bringing up these things, but related to the natural disasters, there is going to be a survey, a web-based survey that's going to go out to all small businesses in the state, asking for their input on experience related to preparation and recovery from natural disasters. And it's coming out of the Office of Planning. And if there's any commodity groups here that would like to help in distributing that survey to your members so that there's a good sample from the ag industry, please let me know. Because I can pass your name or whoever the contact is in your commodity association to the pollster. It's going to come out of SMS Research. And I just want to make sure that we have a good sample size out of the ag industry and from a variety of sectors within the ag industry, I think a variety of commodity groups. So I would just like to ask if anybody has those, has an interest to help to distribute that survey. It'll be a web-based survey. Each respondent will have a unique code so that if you have 100 members, the polling service company will give you 100 specific passwords that then could be used by your members and as a way to try to get things out there. And I know that they've contacted you, Eric. But they've done focus groups. I've been working with that project. They've done focus groups around the state. And the next step is to then produce and distribute this survey. And so I just would like to make sure we get a good coverage. So just let me know.
What if they're not in the computers?
Sorry.
Go to the library.
Then we'll get Di to help fill it out. No, I'm serious. I mean, that is a challenge. Absolutely. It's a challenge, but.
So I guess, is it a call for adjournment?
May I interrupt though? Can we take a vote to see who is available for next month? Because it seems like whenever we get to Kona, we have a hard time in a quorum. So just, just if you could tell me right now, if you're available or not, that would be real helpful.
You are?
Okay.
I'm available.
21.
Yes.
I will not be here, I'll be in Canada.
Okay,
I'll be there.
I expect to be here.
okay, great,
I'll be there too.
great.
I'll be there, US.
You're there, so.
Kona's too close for me.
Yeah, thanks.
Tree got to work.
Okay, so I just noted down everyone here except Eric.
Thank you
Yes.
for the
And Tim's not gonna be able to.
I'll be US Animal Health.
Okay, sorry.
But we have a quorum,
You do.
To know what we expect.
unless the law comes.
Yeah.
I crossed several.
What's the latest on the citrus diseases?
Let me think we talk to adjournment. Is there, can I do just do a
Motion to
motion to adjourn?
second.
All in favor?
And the
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Action.